Hello, folks, and welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I'm Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. As always, here with you, wherever you listen throughout the world. We thank you so much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. And if you want to listen to it on the regular, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple, Spotify, rate, review, but most importantly, subscribe when you go there, because if you do, you won't miss any of our episodes when we drop them on Mondays. But also, speaking of Mondays, it is one right now at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that means we are live on YouTube, and you can not just watch the show, but you can be a part of the show. Get in here when we are live at 7 p.m., and you can comment, and as I said, legitimately be a part of what we are doing here. So other than that, should I say subscribe to did I say that? Subscribe to the YouTube. That's the most important part. Hit the notification bell so that you get notified when we go live. Yada, yada, yada. All those things. At Charlie_Burris. That's Zach TNT. At A to Z Sports. A to Z Sports.com for all the stuff that Zach writes on the internet. And other than that, that's all the administrative work I think we have to do. What is up, Zach?
Pretty quiet time of year, right? We're trying to figure out what we're going to talk about earlier today and realize we're in the depths of the off season. But as always with Tennessee, there's still stuff to talk about, believe it or not, even in the middle of May related to football and the other athletics at Tennessee.
Fourth, only a few things are certain in life. Death, taxes, the off season will be a drag because we're all just waiting for football. And then also, this one's also a certainty. No matter what time of year, Big Ten Jeff will be in the comments of a video. And he's already here. What's up to everybody who is watching? Thank you so much for joining in. We really, really appreciate it. And obviously, leave your comments if you have them. Terry says, tighten up. Tighten up. Still a fan. We'll see how everything goes, but with the Levis and the whole deal. But regardless, on today's show, give you a quick rundown. We're gonna discuss first, probably a couple articles that Zach wrote actually about 2023 expectations for Tennessee. That's gonna be our first topic of discussion, and just kind of what is success? Because obviously anything below 11 wins, you're going to be worse than last year. But also what's really realistic, we're going to kind of talk about that. Then recruiting odds and ends. There's always something with recruiting. And there's a couple of good ones this past week that could end up being big for Tennessee. So we're going to talk about some recruiting tidbits. And then baseball, the postseason starts. Going to do a little postseason preview. And then we'll wrap up the show talking about the entertainment complex that's coming to maybe coming to outside of Neyland Stadium, and then also maybe a bridge across the river that's going to also go to another thing. We're going to discuss it all, and that's what we'll wrap up the show with. But before we get to our first topic, as always, I got to tell you about the great folks at Omaha Steaks. Whether he's your father, father-in-law, or father figure, he's the guy who was always ready to step up when you needed him most. This Father's Day, show him the love with the only gift that's as unforgettable as he is, the mouth-watering perfection of Omaha Steaks. From perfectly aged, oh-so-tender steaks to hand-selected gift packages, Omaha Steaks makes it easy to give Dad what he really wants. Order today and get $30 off with promo code VOLS, that is VOLS, and every purchase is backed by their unconditional money-back guarantee. That's right. Head over to omahasteaks.com right now. Use promo code VOLS at checkout and get $30 off your qualifying order. Packages can include fork tender bacon wrap filet mignons, other gourmet grillables like the air-chilled boneless chicken breast, burgers, jumbo franks, and many more favorites. Don't forget to save room for dessert. Most gift packages come with 4 delicious caramel apple tartlets. I just ate dinner and I'm still like, oh man, I got to get some caramel apple tartlets here. So check out other hand-selected packages that guarantee to make Dad's day. Because if there's one thing we know, and I got to hold the mic because last time when I did this last week, I knocked the mic off and ruined the show. Dads want steak. If there's one thing we know, it's that dads want steak. So get it for them. Omaha Steaks. Minimum order may be required. See site for details. That's Omaha Steaks. Promo code VOLS. All righty. So now let's get to the couple of things that you wrote on A to Z today, Zach. I sent it to you. Do you have it open in front of you? There was a couple of things that came up where basically, obviously, all off season, everybody's a blowhard. We're just kind of talking to talk because this is what we do. This is what we get paid to do, and so you just have to talk about things. And there were some folks from national media outlets just speaking out into the ether about what they think about Tennessee. This was Zach's headline: here's where Tennessee falls in post-spring power rankings from prominent national media outlet. This was from On3, I think. What'd they have to say, Zach?
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty fair post-spring power rankings. I mean, obviously, it doesn't mean a whole lot. It's basically just getting the temperature of how the national media views Tennessee going into 2023. And you look back at last season, I think some folks were optimistic that Tennessee would take a step forward, but they didn't think they were going to win 11 games, right? I mean, most people, even us, we thought 9 wins, probably the ceiling coming off the impressive 6-win, first season for Heupel, or 7-win regular season for Heupel. Going into this season, it doesn't, it feels like Tennessee's getting a little more respect than they did last year, which again, fair considering where the program's been, but they're not assuming that Tennessee's going to be that top 5, that the teams that win 11-ish games a season, essentially. They have them at number 12 in their post-spring power rankings, which that's probably about where they should be. You lost a lot of NFL talent: Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, Cedric Tillman, Darnell Wright, Byron Young. We all know, those guys are gone, and you have to replace those guys. You have to prove that you have people to step up and replace those guys. And we think they do with Square White, Dante Thornton, John Campbell, the offensive tackle transfer from Miami, obviously Joe Milton stepping in. But those guys have to prove that they can play to the same level that last year's Vols did. So until they do that and do it consistently every single year, and Josh Heupel's running a 10, 11 game winning, team out there every single season, they're just not going to get that type of respect. And yeah, it's something that Alabama gets that same season as Tennessee last year, arguably a bigger question at quarterback, but they kind of get that benefit of the doubt because of what they've done. And I'm sure some Tennessee fans probably don't love that, but you gotta win more than 11 games. You can't just do it one season. You got to do it back-to-back seasons. You got to do it, 3 out of 5 years, those types of seasons before you really start to get that respect. I think the one question I had with some of their rankings is they had LSU pretty high, number 4, also coming off the same record as Tennessee last season. Actually, I think they lost the extra game because of the SEC championship game, but lost to Tennessee in the regular season. They're kind of getting the benefit of the doubt. I don't know if it's the Brian Kelly effect, where he had the success at Notre Dame and kind of had a little rocky start at LSU and had a pretty good finish to the season. I think you have to respect what he did down there in Baton Rouge, but it does feel like they're kind of getting propped up a little bit coming off the same type of season Tennessee had, whereas the Vols, it's like, hey, you got to show us before we believe it.
I'm still trying to keep this perspective. And this will probably change after this season. But if you told me in between year 2 and year 3 for Josh Heupel that you'd be coming off of 11 wins and that a large national media outlet would be saying in the offseason that Tennessee is number 12 for the coming season, I would have gone, "Oh, you're crazy. Shut up. What are you talking about? There's no way that Josh Heupel is going to build this thing that quickly. Take a chill pill. We'll get there 4 or 5 years, maybe." That would have been my thought. And so I'm still trying to keep that perspective. While at the same time, I want to go, give me 11 wins again. That's what we all want. Beat Bama, beat Florida. This season, obviously the huge ones, beat Georgia. We all want that, but those expectations are something that I think it would be almost cruel to saddle Tennessee with, to go like just 12 wins is the expectation this season. Like, I mean, that's like really, it's a lot. And so I don't want to be defeatist and just talk Tennessee into only a 9-win season or something like that. Can they beat every team on their schedule? Yes. I think that's unequivocally true. They will be favored in probably every game. I would guess, obviously we'll see after the season starts, but I would bet that they're favored in every game except Bama and Georgia. Maybe Texas A&M, depending on how exactly that looks, but I believe that game's in
That's in
Neyland.
Knoxville. Yeah, it's in
Yeah.
Knoxville.
So, I mean,
But that is almost like a trap game. I've seen it described that way. It's wedged in there between South Carolina and Alabama. And I know Texas A&M had kind of had a down year last year, but that's only Jimbo Fisher's second losing season ever, I think, which includes that last year at Florida State when he was pretty much checked out. And I'm not going to say that Jimbo's going to come back and go, 10-2 this season or 11-1 or 9-3 or whatever. Who knows what happens? Maybe he turns it around. Maybe he doesn't. But that's not a team you can sleep on just because they went 5-7 last season.
I completely agree. It really is going to be a crapshoot as far as they could, because the guy can't coach offense. And it used to be his thing. I mean,
well, he always had these great Jameis Winston.
Yeah,
he had this transcendent quarterback that kind of carried that team. So was it Winston? Was it Fisher? I mean, it's kind of like Joe Burrow and Ed Ogeron, maybe in a way.
Maybe, but I mean, on the whole, I'm fine with this assessment. It may be, even for my comfortability, it may be even a little too high. I kind of go like, maybe put us a little more under the radar. I'm okay with that. I loved the element of last season of just total surprise, where Tennessee kind of came out of the weeds and just was, we're here. What's up, everybody? Like, you're not hiding.
Well, it's certainly fun when you're not expecting it and you go on this roll and you beat Florida, you beat LSU, you beat Alabama, and you set up that big showdown with Georgia, which didn't go Tennessee's way. But to even be in that type of matchup, that magnitude in November, those are the games Tennessee wants to be in, and they were in that game. It didn't go their way. Georgia outplayed them. They straight up beat them. Man. I think we all know that. But still, just getting to play in those games, that's the goal when you come to Tennessee. Clearly, they want to win those games moving forward, but you got to at least put yourself in position to be in those games to start with.
Billy Jones in the comments says we should be top 10. You wouldn't hear a peep out of me if Tennessee ends up being top 10 preseason.
I mean, it really doesn't matter. You got to go out there and prove it starting week 1 against Virginia.
Exactly.
I mean, you go out there and you lay an egg against Virginia and win by 7 or lose. I mean, any of those things are possible. It's another Power 5 team. Suddenly, it doesn't really matter where you were ranked preseason.
Definitely not. And then Skylar Hyde on Twitter, actually, he says 10-2. 10-2, Charlie. 10-2 is what he says.
Which on paper, that's pretty fair. I mean, if you think the Georgia game is going to be a loss, which it's probably going to be more winnable than last year for sure, because it's in Knoxville. You don't have, they're breaking in a new quarterback, though. By that late in the season, Georgia should have found their groove, and hopefully Tennessee as well. But you would say that game and the Alabama game in Tuscaloosa, even with their quarterback situation, you haven't won there since 2003. So same thing with the Swamp in Florida. Though I do think you win that game against Florida. I think you're just the better team. I'm not sold on Billy Napier, and it hasn't went great down there yet. But the Georgia and Alabama game for sure are the 2 losses that I think most people would probably pencil in.
It's pretty much this simple for me. If you get through Florida undefeated, 10-2 is my prediction for Tennessee. The one that I flip flop on is maybe Texas A&M, but the rest.
Yeah, I see what they do those first few weeks of the season.
Yeah, it would depend. I mean, I would say this: if you demolish Virginia and then you go to the Swamp and win by 17,
like the Baton Rouge game last year.
Exactly. If you get to that point, I might be predicting 11-1, and take your pick between Georgia and Alabama, which one that might be. But that might be my prediction at that point. If it looks like Tennessee is a little bit of a steamroller, like they were last season, I mean,
if Georgia was in September, like late September,
I agree
better about that. But being the next to last game of the season for Tennessee, that's tough. That's when Georgia's really at their best usually.
But it's again, to kind of put things in perspective, it's honestly pretty crazy. Like I feel like obviously I've done radio or podcasts for years and years and years now. And I've always said stuff like, well, if Tennessee comes out and they look if they look amazing. And in all of these years leading up to Josh Heupel, that never came true. Butch Jones, you go out there and you got a freaking stacked team, a bunch of dudes ended up playing in the NFL, a team that should have won not just the SEC East, but probably should have won the SEC and played in the playoff in 2015, 2016, take your pick there. There was always that. And then
And
Josh
go,
Heupel.
yeah, and Butch would go, to overtime against Appalachian State.
Yes. I mean, that was what we always got. And then last season, I mean, we probably said the same sort of stuff. Well, if you got Florida at home, you make it to Florida undefeated, and then you're looking at LSU. I mean, hey, this could happen. And then it actually did. It actually came to fruition that stuff actually happened. Finally, it really did get here. And obviously, none of us really knew what to do. We were all just sitting around going like, "How is this real? What's going on?" But at now, since we've seen it happen, it's kind of like when basketball won the SEC championship or baseball, the way how good baseball has been. You go like, okay, this is reality now. This can really happen. You can have a baseball team that good. You can have a basketball team that wins an SEC championship. You can have a football team that wins 11 games. We're back with those kind of actual expectations. But at first glance, and this will change after week 1 probably, but at first glance, this feels like 9 wins is most likely. 10 wins is good. 11 wins is gravy. 12 wins, you're in the playoff. I mean, it's the best season in forever for Tennessee. And so any of those outcomes is realistic, but it's what is most likely. And so at 9 to 10 wins, somewhere right in there, that puts Tennessee at maybe top 10, probably top 15. And so that number 12 feels pretty right to me. But before we move on, Zach, anything else on expectations for next season? We can't exhaust it too much. It's a long off season.
Yeah, I mean, we'll make official predictions, I'm sure, later on this summer before the season starts and go through the schedule and see how everything's shaping up. But I think the main thing is you want to get around 10 wins. You want to do that back-to-back seasons, and you don't want to get blown out by Georgia and Alabama. And there are no moral victories. I mean, Josh Heupel's made it clear he wants to go to Atlanta, wants to win a championship. I mean, that's their goal, and it should be. It should be every team's goal. I don't care what team it is. If you're not setting out there to win every game, what's the point of even going out there? But you also you want to belong in these games. And I've said for years on the podcast and writing that when Tennessee's like officially back, it's when that game against Alabama is a toss-up. Well, you beat them in Knoxville. Alabama's probably going to be favored in Tuscaloosa, regardless of what happens the first few games of the season. You go play them close. It goes down to the wire. You beat them. You lose by a score. Suddenly, that is what that game's become. It could go either way, and that's the way Tennessee, Alabama should be. Some years, Alabama's going to have a better team, or Tennessee's going to have the better team. In other years, the way it kind of was back before Nick Saban was in town and before Tennessee's downfall. So as long as you're in those games, it's coming down to the last 5 minutes of the quarter. I mean, you can't go win every single game. It's just not feasible every single season. I mean, Georgia's eventually going to trend downward. They're not going to stay at this level forever. Same thing with Alabama, and which we've already started to see a little bit with Bama from the way they used to dominate. So I think that's the main thing is you don't want to give up on any games. You don't want to have a repeat of that South Carolina game from last season, even if that's against Alabama. You don't want to lose by 25 points to anybody. So I think that's the main takeaway for me this in 2023 is it's kind of a transition year, which, 1998 was kind of supposed to be that too with T. Martin after Peyton. And I'm not going to come out here and, call a national championship. I don't think anybody was then either. But that aside, it is kind of a transition year going into Nico in 2024, which is kind of 2024, 2025. That's when you're really expecting Tennessee to go compete for a national championship. And, they need to do that because that's kind of what they're building towards.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And you're building towards not just Nico, but potentially a pretty decently strong defense, depending on how the chips fall for you. And on that note, our next topic is going to be a little recruiting news about Tennessee's defense, but also Tennessee's offense. There was tidbits on both sides of the ball from their recruiting landscape. And we're going to tell you about it right after I tell you about our amazing sponsor, Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans has been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200-plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Go get your health plan. Support them because they're always supporting us. Great, great, great people at Farm Bureau. All right, so a couple of things from recruiting, and we'll lead off with this. And this is really just a question I'll throw to you, Zach. Is this a nothing burger, or is it something? So Kamarion Franklin, who we talked about last week, has been trending towards Tennessee in it seems like a pretty big way. I believe the recruiting prediction machine on On3 right now has Franklin at 77% to Tennessee, the leader far and away on that recruiting prediction machine. And there was it a crystal ball from 247 that came Tennessee's way also for him, and that's big. Then this week, a tweet from 247 Sports that says, it's from Rivals. It's from Rivals. It says, "Stay tuned. 5-star Kamarion Franklin checking in," and it was a video of him where he says, decision coming up, and he lists at Alabama, Auburn, Ole Miss, Tennessee, but then at the end of the video, he throws up the vol sign, the VOL, right?
Yeah.
He throws that up at the end of the video. And I'll ask you this: we're looking into all the tea leaves with the recruits. Is this a sure thing? Did he essentially commit to Tennessee in this video, Zach?
Yeah, I'm not about to say that because my philosophy on recruiting is I don't really believe it until I see them on campus going through practice. That's always kind of been my rule because 17, 18-year-olds, you just never know what's going through their mind. I think in this instance, it seems like Tennessee's in a pretty good spot for Franklin. I put more stock into what some of the recruiting analysts are saying that talk to these guys and have relationships with them more so than the sign at the end of the video. It's not a bad sign for sure. I mean, if you're a Tennessee fan, you definitely want to see that from 5-star recruits that a lot of programs want. But these recruits also know how to play this game. I mean, they know how to get attention, how to build their social media followings. I'm not going to say that this kid's using Tennessee for that. I think kids in the past before have done that. So that's why I really don't put a whole lot of stock into a lot of that stuff. And it's just kind of the nature of recruiting these days. It's not like it used to be. So I don't put a whole lot of, thought into that. I think they're in a good spot. It's a guy they need. Like Jeff is, Big Ten Jeff has said in the comments, Tennessee has to fix their defense before they compete for a national championship. You're not gonna win, with one of the worst pass defenses in the nation, and that all starts with the pass rush. To generate that with your front four, and you need a guy like Kamarion Franklin to go up against these Georgias and Alabamas and Ohio States and some of these top programs to go out and be able to go out and compete with those guys on a playoff level stage.
Yeah, it's time to win these battles. I mean,
just being in the battle is not enough at this point. You're going into year 3. If you really want to turn this around and make the playoff, and after this year, the expanded playoff, it'll be a lot easier for all of the every major program. But if you actually want to be a threat to win a championship, you have to win these battles. It's the only way.
Exactly. Point blank. Period. This has to happen for Tennessee to reach that next level, because we've said it a ton on here. The thing Tennessee needs, this offense with Josh Heupel, essentially no matter who is playing, this offense is going to cook, because that's how Josh Heupel's running this thing. But with this defense, I mean, you step it up to a passable level, where you're not giving up 63 points to South Carolina. Man, you could be a serious powerhouse in college football landscape. So,
and they showed signs last year. Like, this whole narrative about Tennessee's defense just being this complete disaster. I mean, it was a complete disaster against South Carolina, and we all know that. They couldn't stop Spencer Rattler in that offense at all in Columbia that night. It was dreadful. And, there were other games where it could have been better, but like the Alabama game, giving up 49, I mean, Alabama gave up 52. I mean, Hendon Hooker put more points on the board than Bryce Young. And Bryce Young is one of the best SEC quarterbacks I've ever seen. I mean, he's the number 1 pick in the NFL draft at his size for a reason. So that game I don't really hold against them that much. You look at the LSU game, the Kentucky game, the Clemson game. I know it's Vanderbilt, but even that Vanderbilt game, I mean, that was a team that was playing decent at that time and fighting for bowl eligibility, and they completely shut them down. They played really well that night. So they showed flashes. When they execute the game plan, they could kind of do what they need to do and get off the field in important situations like they did against Florida. Florida drove down the field. They'd stop them in the red zone, and they did similar with Clemson. Like when they executed their plan, we're fine. They didn't stick to that. They could execute like we saw in the South Carolina game. It was a disaster for them. So it's not that it was completely terrible, but they got to be more consistent. I think that's the key.
Exactly. It just is what it is here because the offense is going to be good. And actually, I wanted to say this. I actually saw this comment earlier. Jeff Rodham said, how much do you think the new play clock rule will affect our offense, which is the play clock will keep running after first downs? We've talked about it.
Game clock.
Sorry, game clock. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say this. Let's do a whole segment on this in an upcoming show. Maybe honestly next week. I'll jot it down. Yeah, that can be a segment next week, and we'll make a clip out of it on YouTube.
Josh Heupel has talked about it, so we'll
I'll write that down. Sure. So there you go, Jeff. Tune in next week. I'll give a little teaser for the folks. But yeah, point blank, you got to have these defensive players. You got to just have elite players in general. But on offense, I mean, it's clear that you can do this with what Josh Heupel has to work with. And then on top of that, you've been getting elite players. You've been getting great players out of the transfer portal. I mean, I think Brew McCoy is going to be an absolute dude this season. It looks like Dante Thornton's got some serious talent. And then, he also makes it happen with guys that aren't flashy. And so, I mean, look at that running back room. Incredibly effective with guys who, when they came in, were, I don't want to say total no names. Was Jalen Wright a 4-star? Maybe.
I can't remember. I know he had a reputation for being fast, and it was a solid pickup out of Durham.
But it wasn't. None of them were superstar. 5-star.
He's done all of this without 5 stars. I mean, Brew McCoy, I guess, was a 5-star before he went to USC. But the shine kind of wore off after he, went through some off the field stuff and didn't, put up 5-star numbers. And he really didn't last season. I don't think he's fast enough to really be a burner. But man, we saw the way he can impact a game against Clemson. Early in the season, it's Pittsburgh, fighting for those extra yards, picking up those first downs when you're hit 3 yards behind the first down marker, and he's able to kind of charge through there and pick up the first down. But we haven't seen Heupel with just loaded 5-star wide receivers, 5-star quarterback. We haven't seen that yet, which is pretty exciting if you're a Tennessee fan.
It definitely is. And speaking of, elite guys or great guys on offense, here's another recruiting tidbit for you. This was just from this was on a tweet from Rocky Topology, who it's a fan account essentially, but they tweet a bunch of recruiting updates. This is where I saw this, and I mean, I trust that this was he said this somewhere, but they said Tennessee is trending for 5-star wide receiver Mike Matthews per 247 Sports director Steve Wiltfong. So that was Rocky Topology tweeting out something from Steve Wiltfong. So Tennessee is trending for 5-star wide receiver Mike Matthews per Steve Wiltfong at 247 Sports. And let's just say this. If this is really true and Tennessee can get a foot in the door, I believe he also set a visit for Tennessee and has visited.
I think he's visiting in June.
Yes, June 23rd, 2023. He is set for an official visit to Tennessee. He's already visited before. We talked about it when he did the last time for a junior day. He came to Tennessee. This would be awesome. Not just because it's a 5-star wide receiver. I mean, obviously, that's amazing. And a 5-star wide receiver in Josh Heupel's offense is just a dream. I mean, I can't get much better than that with Heupel as your coach. But this kid is, according to 247 Sports, the number 2 player in the state of Georgia. And to steal a kid out of Georgia who's being pursued by Georgia, obviously, make no mistake about that. If you were to win this battle, that obviously would speak incredible volumes about Josh Heupel and probably the power of what just happened in the NFL draft for 2 of his wide receivers, things like that. But man, that would be so sweet to get this kid.
Yeah, I think what Wiltfong said was more like Tennessee's a team to keep an eye on in this battle, kind of like a wink, which is still super encouraging because, like you said, you put it all out there. Number 2 player in the state of Georgia, super athletic kid, fast, plays basketball, could probably play college basketball if he wanted to be honest. I think he even had an offer from like Mississippi State, maybe. Can play safety if he needs to. I mean, he is that type of athlete. I mean, this is an NFL caliber talent if he sticks to it, puts the work in like he's supposed to, and does the things he needs to do when he gets to college. Yeah, that would be massive. This is the type of player that we were talking about that Heupel hasn't really had in the offense yet. And just imagine what he could do with this type of kid. I mean, you saw what he did with Jalen Hyatt. Hyatt's obviously super talented. Was a 4-star kid, very very fast, and he was able to maximize his potential with Heupel. But just very exciting to think about one, what this kid could do in Tennessee's offense, and two, what it could lead to down the road. I mean, I know other fan bases love to laugh at the whole wide receiver U coming back thing for Tennessee, and it's not there yet. I mean, you need Jalen Hyatt, you need Cedric Tillman, and some of these guys to go to the NFL and have some big seasons like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and those guys have had coming out of LSU, or DeAndre Hopkins and coming out of Clemson. But man, it feels like it's on the verge of being that. Like Heupel's getting wide receivers to the NFL, and if Hyatt and Tillman and Velus Jones prove that they can succeed in the NFL coming from Heupel's offense, you're going to see these guys starting to go earlier in the draft, right? If Dante Thornton goes and has a Hyatt-like season, then Hyatt finds success with the Giants, this this season. Well, maybe Thornton's a second-round pick or a late first-round pick instead of seeing them fall all the way to the third round. I mean, it could really get some momentum going, and the dominoes start falling here for Tennessee.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I mean, this is how you would draw it up on paper, the way Heupel has kind of built this thing.
Exactly. If you had either, but especially both of these kids. I mean, a five-star on defense, 5-star on offense, guys that you can recruit around, and also if they're willing to, you can use them to recruit on your behalf. That's a class changer and a team changer potentially. Obviously, like a Nico Iamaleava. I mean, the power of that. But yeah, I mean it.
This comment real quick from Ben Hall. So if our offense, Tennessee's offense, was such a gimmick, then why did 4 guys get drafted from the first round? And Charlie, I know that you're kind of on a Titans maybe hiatus right now after the Will Levis pick, but I don't know if you saw Treylon Burks' comments about the Titans offense under Tim Kelly, the new offensive coordinator, last week. Did you happen to see any of that?
I have decided to essentially ignore everything about the Titans outside of just like peripherally, like if I scroll by it on Twitter, that's pretty much it. But I haven't been like, normally I would be like watching A to Z's shows and stuff, which you should go do. Let's say if you're in the mood, and they've been doing crazy numbers. I mean, it's been a big off season for them, but yeah. So no, I did not see what he had to say.
No, they just asked him kind of, what the new offense, or if it's a new offense, what the offense is going to look like under Tim Kelly. And he talked about tempo, moving faster, more freedom for the wide receivers, more fun to play in. And he didn't go into specifics and X's and O's, but doesn't that sound a lot like Tennessee's offense?
Yeah. Hello, somebody.
And on top of that, the ironic part here is that they drafted Will Levis, who does not think that's real football. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Stupidest organization in the NFL right now. And I say that as a fan. I'm a big Titans fan. They just can't get out of their own way.
The point of that was Ben's comment of, if this offense is so gimmicky, it does seem like some NFL teams are kind of reaching and pulling from some of that stuff. We've seen a little bit of it with the Chiefs. You're going to see some of it with the Giants, whose their offensive staff came from Kansas City, and that's where Hyatt's at. So that's a better fit than maybe we realized. And now the Titans kind of throwing some stuff out there, and it kind of is true. Like, this stuff does kind of go up from college to the NFL sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you see like it in the college ranks still. Clemson, I mean, you beat their head in, and then all of a sudden their quarterback is coming out going, oh, well, actually, we're going to run tempo. We're going to be going fast. People are going to be shocked. Oh, how convenient that Josh Heupel beat the snot out of you, and suddenly you want to run his offense. What a coincidence. Yeah, I mean, if it works, it works. If it works, it's that simple. If it works, it works. So yeah, it's no surprise that you see it work in the SEC, and I'm sure that turns a few heads in the NFL. So there's pretty much that. Anything else with football before we bounce over to baseball and finish up with a little, I guess you would say, like Tennessee lifestyle talk at the end with this new entertainment complex?
Yeah, I think we squeezed about all the football talk you can in late May before things really get going here in a couple of months.
Yeah, we got like a month and a half before it gets spicy again. You
Yeah,
get into
about
the SEC
right
media
before.
days.
Yeah, right around there. I guess the league meetings are coming up soon, so we should have some schedule talk. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And that'll be fun to kind of dissect and go through.
I certainly hope so. And we'll obviously break all of that down. But now, gonna do a little preview of the baseball postseason. It starts, I believe, tomorrow
With
in the
Tennessee,
SEC
yeah.
tournament. We'll sort of give some predictions, and then we can maybe reapproach them after and see how stupid our predictions really are. But I got to tell you first about Superbook Sports. Bring that big bet energy this summer with Superbook Sports. Superbook Sports is the most trusted name in sports betting. And right now, use promo code A2Z to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code A2Z. Simply visit superbook.com for terms and conditions or download the Superbook Tennessee app in the App Store. Enter the promo code A2Z and you'll get $250 courtesy of Superbook Sports. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, GAMBLER. The Superbook Sports Tennessee app. Go and get it. Download it right now and bet on some sports responsibly, of course. Okay. Baseball finishes off with a really nice series win at South Carolina. And here's the thing. With the regular season over, it was overall a disappointing regular season. You didn't win a series on the road until your very last series. So playing right at the right time, potentially. But the big thing that I noticed this weekend is that the pitching probably looked the best that it's looked all season. And that could be huge. I mean, in college baseball, if you have the superior bullpen, you're going to be the better team most nights. And so, does this instill confidence in you going forward, Zach? How did that series win over South Carolina make you feel?
Yeah, I thought the best part of that series win was the fact that they got the series win in the rubber game. That's something
Yeah.
that's been failing them, where they've won a game early in the series, first game of the series, you drop the next one, and then you drop that third game. It's a series loss. You go home. So to get that win on the third game of the series, especially playing split it up like they had to, I think that's really encouraging. I think the pitching, like you said, super encouraging based on where this team was a couple of months ago, or really a month and a half ago. Kind of the conversation we were having about this team. This is really, if we said everything, it's went as well as it could have since that conversation. If you were to draw out, okay, this is how Tennessee can turn the season around and still make a run in the SEC tournament, make an Ole Miss like run maybe, and win a championship. This is where they needed to be, and I would have liked to have seen them sweep South Carolina. That would have made me feel a little bit better, but it's baseball. That's just not always possible. You can will it and want it and do everything you possibly can to win a game, and sometimes it just doesn't go your way. That's baseball. It's a really hard sport to play. To win that series right before the SEC tournament, I think not only gives the team some confidence, because I'm sure that, I mean, they've heard all that noise. That was the big talking point about this team, is they can't win on the road. So winning that series in the last regular season series of the year really gives you some momentum going into the SEC tournament. And I mean, gives you plenty of confidence that, hey, that's behind us now. And kind of like all those other, speed bumps that they knocked over and went over and put that stuff in the rearview mirror, they were able to accomplish it, or they were able to get past this roadblock. And that was huge for them.
Yeah, maybe, just maybe, this is a playing right at the right time thing
Yeah.
in a real way. And I think you're going to see that starting tomorrow at the SEC tournament. Whether that's true or not, you're facing a team you already swept in Texas
Mm-hmm.
A&M, but you swept them at home. Can you go to Hoover, where you won the championship last year, so you can win there? I mean, obviously, a bunch of guys from this team were on that team, and so you won the championship last year. You can win in this stadium. You're playing a team initially that you already swept, but your second game would be against Arkansas, who swept you at Arkansas, though. So a road game. So now you get him in a neutral site. Could be exciting. I I like how this is setting up, but I would throw it to you, Zach, just to make it kind of a quick thing. What are your predictions for Tennessee in this postseason? Because I'll give mine. I'm not sure how I'm feeling, but I'll throw it to you first. How far do you think they make in the SEC tournament and then the NCAA tournament? Like I said, maybe we can come back in a couple of what would it be in a few weeks and
Yeah,
see how it plays out.
I'm not sure yet on the SEC tournament stuff. I think they beat Texas A&M on Tuesday. I think they get past that game and get into the double elimination. I don't feel great about that Arkansas game. It's hard to predict Tennessee to win when you were swept by them earlier this year. I feel like picking Tennessee to win that game is just hoping that Tennessee wins that game. So I think Arkansas wins that game. But then if you lose that game, I think you play the loser of Georgia, South Carolina, much more manageable matchup, and you get past that, eliminate one of those teams, and then I think, okay, let's see where it goes from here. Let's get our feet under us type deal, see what happens from there. So I don't have a good feeling about them winning this like I did last year. I think they'll advance around, but I don't think they finish it off like they did last year.
I don't think they're going to win the SEC championship. The league is just a murderer's row this season from top to bottom. It's crazy how good it's crazy most years how good the SEC is, and it's especially crazy this season. I mean, it just is. It's like the entire top 10 is just all SEC teams. It's ridiculous. And you just have so many teams just right there at the top. LSU, Florida, Arkansas. I mean, they're just all great.
I think the
great
good
baseball.
thing is that there's way less pressure, which I mean, Tennessee did fine with the pressure last year. They were the team to beat going into the tournament. I do think there's a little bit of pressure that's been removed from them this season just because of how everything's gone. And then that pressure is on Florida. It's on LSU. It's on Arkansas. You gotta live up to that. I do think that makes things a little better for Tennessee's path, but man, you're right. I mean, it's gonna be whoever gets hot, and that's a gamble. Like that could be any of these teams. Like these are really talented teams. If you're looking at it objectively, any of these teams could go out and win, and it wouldn't be a surprise. So that's why it's really hard for me to pick Tennessee. It's more that I'm taking the field more so than I'm betting against Tennessee. I just think there's too many options that are good options that could go all the way.
So I'm going to guess this will be my prediction. Tennessee actually beats Texas A&M and then beats Arkansas.
Okay.
I'll guess that. But then,
so then who would they play?
Where'd it go?
They would play the winner of LSU and South Carolina, Georgia. So basically, they would play LSU if they beat Arkansas.
Yes, and I think they lose that one, and then you would still play another game. I believe
you'd still be in because it's a double elimination if you get past Texas A&M.
And it's kind of a crapshoot from there. But I'll say this: my
that's why it's so hard to project how far because it can work out so many different ways.
I'll guess Florida's playing really good right now. I'll say they win it. I hate that because you're gross.
Yeah,
but they're playing good baseball right now.
I'd rather LSU win. A Florida, Arkansas, LSU. I think I'd go LSU over Arkansas because of their coach, and Florida because of Florida. Right?
Yeah, big no go on Arkansas for sure. But yeah, I mean, I just think realistically, but I'll say, can Tennessee do it? Absolutely. They just actually have to go do it.
The other teams can too,
and
the other top teams.
As far as the NCAA tournament goes, I think they'll make a super regional. So if they do what I think and they beat Arkansas and get there, I think Tennessee would host.
Well, I mean,
at that point,
didn't really work out last year. So,
yeah, well, that's true. Well, they made the super regional last year. Super regional.
Yeah,
but I'll say they make super regional, and then I don't know.
Again, it's
so hard to project. I don't know.
You don't know the matchup, and that's important.
But and I would have thought last year they steamrolled their way all the way to at least the final last season.
Well, I thought they'd get past Notre Dame for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt, I thought they were going to the College World Series. But man, it's such a crapshoot. I'll say they do make the World Series, but it's because I mean that
I think going through that adversity early in the year helps.
Yes. I mean, they've gone through the ringer, and that bullpen is arguably the best in college baseball. Like, just when you really stack it up, Andrew Lindsay, who is not sitting on the bench, but he wasn't a starter at the beginning of the season, now just won SEC Pitcher of the Week and just pitched an absolute gem over the weekend. Dolander just pitched probably his best game of the season, and then Vitello took him out. And let's not do that again, Tony. Please and thank you. Took him out, and the game entirely fell apart. When he's good with Chase Burns. Burns was horrendous against South Carolina. He's got to fix that up. But when he's good, he's really good. Chase Burns in relief. And then, I mean, Drew Beam has been an absolute dude all season. You just have to get the dude version of him, and not, some nights he's gone out and laid a stinker. But you just look at those three starters, and that's one of the best teams in America. And so obviously it comes down to the bats too. They switched up the lineup and put Blake Burke leading off, and then steamrolled South Carolina with that lineup. So maybe that's a little pixie dust that Vitello has figured out. I don't know. I need to see it more than one game, but yeah. So I'll say they get further in the SEC tournament than we think they're gonna, but don't win it. And then I'll say they make the College World Series, and I just am not going to predict one way or another whether they win a national championship, but I'll say that much: they make the World Series.
What's your line for disappointment? Obviously, losing to Texas A&M. Texas A&M would be a big disappointment, but overall postseason, what's acceptable and what's not for Tony Vitello?
Losing to Arkansas would be understandable. It's a very good team. I would hate it. It would make me ill, but they're really, really good. And then following that up, if you lost to Arkansas or Texas A&M, either or, obviously, or got knocked out of the tournament, losing there and then not making a super regional, that's just like wasting, as I said, one of the best bullpens in America.
Mm-hmm.
What a shame that would be. It's like last year where you had one of the best offenses in the history of college baseball, and it just wasted because you had an off weekend against Notre Dame. Like, you just can't let that happen. So I'll say that.
There. I don't think it's championship or bust. I never think that, even last year, because baseball's so weird sometimes. And I mean, who would have Ole Miss? Who would have thought that in the middle of the season last year? But I think I'm with you. If they lose to Arkansas and then they lose to that Georgia South Carolina game, I think that's kind of unacceptable at that point. Or if you lose to A&M.
Agreed. Well, we'll see. Starts tomorrow. We'll find out what happens on Tuesday.
1:30 afternoon game. Yeah, 1:30, I think, Eastern time.
Game 2 of the entire thing, I think. All righty. We'll finish with this. The announcement this week of this entertainment complex. It was controversial, and we'll talk about why right after I tell you about Rattle and Snap, Tennessee whiskey. Nothing goes better with a Tennessee sports victory than an awesome whiskey, and I'm talking specifically about Rattle and Snap. Tennessee Select Straight Whiskey, Log Still Distillery, has a new Tennessee whiskey product line called Rattle and Snap. It's named after a long-forgotten game of chance. Rattle and Snap is a whiskey for those who make their own luck. There's a 4-year and an 8-year version. You can see the 4-year on the corner of the YouTube video right there. It's really excellent. Goes amazing in cocktails. Is great just right in the glass. And you should go grab you a bottle, because the bottle also looks great on the shelf. You can see it right there in the graphics. So you can find it in stores across the state of Tennessee, also in Kentucky, Indiana, and Mississippi. Run and don't walk to get yourself some Rattle and Snap Tennessee Select Straight Whiskey. Follow them on Instagram at Rattle and Snap Whiskey. Now, this was a fun little announcement. They came out. This is almost nothing about this is set in stone, if anything at all. But this was from WAT in Knoxville, although there was an official press release. This was just it's a more succinct version of what Tennessee put out. The University of Tennessee is exploring a public-private partnership to build an entertainment district next to Neyland Stadium, featuring hotels, condos, restaurants, retail space. School officials announced on Wednesday that they have begun a request for information on the feasibility and impact of a Neyland Stadium entertainment district along the Tennessee River waterfront. An initial proposed concept would be anchored by a full-service 12-story hotel at the south end of Neyland Stadium with a rooftop bar or amenity space overlooking the home of Tennessee football. What was controversial about this, though, was this proposed tabletop retail and entertainment district on top of the G10 parking garage. And why this is controversial is because a bunch of people tailgate on top of G10, and they were like, so you're just gonna like put a bunch of stores and stuff over the top of my tailgate spot? And UT went, yep. And that's pretty much the long and the short of it. Again, this is proposed. They're just doing a feasibility study right now. This is years and years and years away at this point. But this would be amazing. But does this bother you at all that a little bit of tradition might get messed with, Zach?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, when it comes to sports, I wouldn't say that I'm a traditionalist. Traditionalist with everything. There are certain traditions though that I love, and I think that's the beauty of college football and sports in general is some of the great traditions in college and even some in professional sports that you don't want to see anything happen to those traditions. And obviously nothing with the game day traditions I don't think would change with this, but I do think the G10 thing, I can understand why people don't like that. I mean, that's a premier tailgating spot. I mean, it's kind of an iconic tailgating spot, really, when it comes to Tennessee and Neyland and going to college football games there. I like the idea of the entertainment district. You're seeing this with a lot of professional teams. The Atlanta Braves, for example, have that around Truist Park. A lot of other professional sports franchises do as well. So I think it's a probably going to see more and more of it in college sports because college sports essentially is almost on the same level as professional sports at this point. So I think you're going to see a lot of this, and it's not a surprise that Danny White and Tennessee kind of want to be at the forefront of this. My gut feeling is all this came out on, I think it was Friday. It's kind of gauging not just the interest. I know they have was the RFI to gauge input and to see what developers would like to do and what they think of it. But I think it's also to see what fans say, to see what the response is, and to see if there's any tweaks that need to be made. I don't think they're going to make wholesale changes to their plans because of fans, but I think Danny White's been pretty good about listening to fans. So I wouldn't get too worked up about any of this just yet. I think they're going to find a happy medium with what fans want, what's feasible, what looks the best. I don't think they want to turn Neyland Stadium into, just a piece of commercial property that's full of chain stores and restaurants and all this other stuff where it completely takes away from what Neyland Stadium is. But I do think attaching something close by, kind of like what the Braves have or some other place, I think there's a way that you can make that work and not look terrible. I'm not a developer, so I don't know what that way is, but I do think it's something that they should look into and consider doing. I think they need to be careful, though. I think they need to be careful about where the hotel's at. You don't want these great shots from ESPN or CBS to have this 12-story hotel, almost attached to Neyland Stadium. You don't want that at all, I don't think. So I think you got to be real careful about that. And really, what kind of need is there for a hotel right beside Neyland for college football games? I don't see how that's super beneficial.
It would be a big time, just kind of novelty project. Because here's now this is real Knoxville centric. Let me say, lived in Knoxville essentially my entire life, except for 6 of my 31 years I've lived in Knoxville, and the other ones were in Nashville. And there's a lot to talk about in terms of urban planning here. Because if you've never been in Knoxville, it runs right up next to downtown. That downtown area, I lived directly in the middle of downtown for 2 years, a few years back. I don't any longer, but there are major problems with that downtown area in terms of accessibility. And they've slowly been improving. But like parking can be a nightmare. And just general accessibility is certain parts. Like there are parts of downtown that have stayed dead because there's no parking, or maybe there's an excessive amount of like homeless people in certain areas and some things like that. Like there's just a lot going on down there. And the thing that scares me with this a little bit on game days, this sounds unbelievable. I think it would be incredible if it's executed correctly. Like to your point, listen to the fans, really get feedback, do it exactly how they like it. It also mentions this pedestrian bridge that could go over the river, which I think has been needed for so long. It says a project to build a pedestrian bridge across Tennessee River to connect the arena, Thompson Bowling Arena, with riverfront property recently acquired by the university has also gained momentum. I think that would be incredible, but it has to be done right, because what I could see happening here is that it's incredible on game days. and then the other, 350 days a year, it would pop on college or basketball game days too. But all the other days of the year, are you actually going to go over there? Are those
Like
businesses going to be supported?
when it's this time of year and students aren't there, what's it going to look
Exactly.
like? Yeah.
Because there's already a pretty nice shopping center that's over by UT's campus. It has a Publix grocery store and all this really nice retail space, and a bunch of it sits empty because nobody goes to it except on game days because college kids can't afford nice stuff. They're college kids. And so there's some to be contended with there, but I think if it's executed correctly, and that's a big if it's executed correctly, this could be incredible. And I'm really excited. And it could be honestly a pioneering thing in college sports because nobody has really done it in college sports. It's been huge in pro sports, as you said. But nobody's doing it on the college level. So I think it could be awesome. But yeah, I mean, I'm a dork about my hometown, my beautiful city here. And as I mentioned, I've lived in downtown. I really care about like that whole area a lot. And this could be amazing for it, or it could kind of end up being a flop, and I don't want that to happen for sure.
Yeah,
So
and the bad thing is if it's a flop, it's too late to turn around and undo it. Then you've got all this infrastructure that you can't just make it disappear, right? So
it's
it
risky.
could quickly go from being one of the most iconic scenes in college football to an eyesore, and you can't do that. Like that's absolutely the worst thing you can do. So to me, it's a thing that would be really cool if executed properly, like you said. At the same time, how necessary is it? I mean, you're going to have as long as Tennessee's winning, you're going to have 100,000 fans at every single home game. It's going to be, again, one of the best scenes in all of college football. Like there's nothing like a Saturday, down south. I mean, it's what we talk about all the time, and Tennessee's a big part of that. It's one of the best places you can go watch a football game in October, November, and September. So you don't want to take away from that at all. So I do question how necessary it is, while also recognizing if executed properly, it could be a really cool thing.
Absolutely. Well, we'll leave it
But
there.
I don't have to make those decisions.
Yeah. It's good luck to everybody involved. As I said, listen to the fans.
I would leave G10 alone. I don't like that, because part of what makes it great there at G10 is it's just kind of like, okay, this is the structure we have. We're going to use it's just kind of
the people's parking garage.
Yes. Yeah. It's not glamorous. It's not, it's not this glamorous thing, but that's where everybody wants to be. And why would it's kind of a romantic feeling when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, make sure you really get feedback from the fans. Do it the right way. But we'll talk about it more. I love talking about stuff like that. If there's more updates throughout the, honestly, years it'll probably take to get that done, we'll talk about it. But
future city council member here.
Yeah. Hey, you never know. Hey, but I do have to throw this in. Vols time, he gave us a super chat. Thanks, man. He said the squirrel will be let loose this season. He absolutely will. We'll just we'll tack that onto our conversation from before. Absolutely. The offense should be a ton of fun this season, and hopefully it leads to big things. So go back and
hear
listen to
more calls from Joe Tessitore, like in the Orange Bowl last year when Joe Milton hit Squirrel White down there near the goal line. Oh, the squirrel got loose on that one. That was one of the best calls of the season.
Yes. I cannot wait. It's going to be a ton of fun. Well, thanks to everybody for commenting, and especially for paying. That's awesome. We really, really appreciate it, for supporting the show, supporting the boys here. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan. This has been the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. Thank you for listening. We could not appreciate it more. Go follow us everywhere, atozsports.com, Twitter, Facebook, yada, yada, yada. You're here. You know where to find all of our stuff. YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification bell and the like button. Appreciate it so much. I think that is it, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.